Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 98 of the Thoughtium Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. 98 episodes in, and we are rounding out our July Thoughtium Perspectives series. We are so fortunate to bring this voice to you all on a week-to-week basis. We absolutely have enjoyed these perspective series as a way to bring very specific and unique perspective forward for you all. This perspective is all about design and experiential design, and we're going to get into it here in a second. But I first wanted to really just welcome all of our communities. You know, every week we are just so appreciative of those folks who tune in to the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series, to those folks who engage with our Thoughtium perspectives. We get so much great feedback from our community members, our clients, that we just appreciate our leaders that we bring to this table stepping into the discussion week over week over week. And we take such great pride in being able to share this voice every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central. So we want to welcome our LinkedIn community, those folks who tune in via the LinkedIn feed. Hello. We are so fortunate to be a part of the LinkedIn Live beta community. We also want to welcome our YouTube folks. And also those folks who may be joining this perspective series as part of your pre-work or as part of your learning experience. Welcome. Today's discussion is going to round out a three-part series that we have brought forward as part of this the Thoughtium Perspectives series. And this is all about creating this space for unique perspectives that drive the way that we see the world, the way that we see our workplace, and most importantly, the way that we see those within. You can find all of our perspectives content at thoughttium.com/perspectives. And to remind everybody, perspectives is really three things. We bring forward a topic that matters most in leadership, and we unpack it in three parts. And this perspectives has been a really special one. We've talked about really the power of experiential design. At the end of the day, we are all designers. And we learned from AJ Gailey, who really brought forward kind of the impact that design has had in her career and her business. We then talked to Rachel and Madison from the Thoughtium team, and they unpacked experiential design. What are the key components to design, and how do we apply design in more of our day-to-day? And today is all about putting all of this mindset and this skill set into practice with a toolkit, and that is the Daily Design Toolkit. And we're just so excited to have at the table our head of design here at Thoughtium. And I'm going to bring in Molly Sutherland for today's conversation. Molly is a designer here at Thoughtium. She has not only brought design to the forefront of everything that we do here at Thoughtium, but she has also led this conversation on the power of experiential design over the course of the last 2 to 3 weeks. And she's going to lead today's discussion as well, too. But I really wanted to bring Molly in first and foremost by way of introduction and maybe do a little bit of a power intro, Molly. You've been with Thoughtium for just about 90 days, and the impact that you've had here on not just our work, but our team has been immeasurable. This series has been about the power of design, and realized through Molly and her work that design can not only be in the fabric of everything that we do, but it can really show up in the way that we create dialogue, the way that we tell stories, and the way that we deliver work. And, if we've ever had somebody that has stepped into the Thoughtium organization where their scope of work, and more importantly, their scope of impact, has so drastically increased within the first 90 days, it's definitely been Molly. So there's no one that I'd rather have this conversation about practical day-to-day uses of design and this design toolkit than you, Molly. Welcome, and congratulations on just an incredibly successful first 90 days as part of our growing team.
Well, thank you. I would call that a great power intro. I don't know what else I can add. But it's been so fun to not only see my work in Thoughtium grow, but especially over these last couple of weeks, really put that into practice and share that with our community on what design looks like, not only here at Thoughtium, but in my day-to-day as well. I think over the course of the last 3 months, I've learned just how much my kind of personal mission aligns with Thoughtium, and like bringing that design and strategy together to really like solve problems, find creative solutions, and bring those to life. And one thing that I've loved is I think our entire team at Thoughtium is very strong in the design mindset. Like we all thrive in design. We all just do it in really different ways. And so I've
Yeah.
loved being able to come in and do that from the visual design sense, because it's already so abundant at Thoughtium. And so it's been really, really fun to partner with the team to make that happen.
Well, thank you for being here. And I'm excited for this conversation. And I really want to just maybe hand the floor over to you to guide us through the design toolkit, because this is really where the rubber hits the road. These are practical day-to-day tools that are going to be a part of this perspective and hopefully a part of everybody's work as you dive more into experiential design. So Molly, please take us away.
Yeah. So I'm excited to dive into these kind of tools, resources to make everything that we've been talking about really practical, tangible, and something to take away today. I think first I want to just start to make sure that we're grounded in the conversations we've been having, right? So it's always good to revisit and kind of bring those back up. So we're in that mindset. Let's get back into the design mindset, thinking creatively. So as you mentioned in episode 1, we really introduced experiential design. And I thought that was just such a powerful conversation. AJ is doing such incredible work with Lucy. What were a few takeaways from that conversation, Anthony, as we really think about what design is and how we bring it to life?
Yeah, that was such a great discussion to start this perspectives. And AJ Gailey and her entire team at Lucy Creative are true practitioners in design. And for those of you who are a part of the Thoughtium community, you know that practitionership is a word that we take very seriously. We define practitionership as treating your work like an art form or a craft. And there is no better craftsman that I've met in experiential design in such a short period of time as we got closer to AJ and her work than the work that Lucy does. They live and breathe experiential design. And one of the concepts that was part of that episode that came forward that I think really resonated and hopefully did with all of you that tuned in was this idea of experiential design and how it differentiates our storytelling. And AJ made this very clear differentiation between storytelling, traditional storytelling, which is essentially, creating a story and putting a story out there and asking or maybe even hoping for people to engage with that story. She made a very clear distinction that experiential design is actually taking our listeners, our users, our customers, and putting them in the story. And Lucy Creative does that through these very immersive, almost physical installations where they are physically putting people in the middle of a story. And whether that's a brand story or whether that's a story that supports some sort of part of history or a museum artifact, AJ and her team really make it clear that in order to truly drive effective storytelling, we have to put our users in the center of the story. And we got a chance to take a bit of a field trip up to Lucy Creative and see, the work that they do. And it didn't surprise us that, this mid-sized design shop was connected to a 100,000 square foot production studio, because they take their work of putting people in the story very seriously, and they build these incredible installations. Most recently, AJ, Lucy, and the team were awarded with the exclusive exhibition design responsibilities for the new Adams Presidential Center to be built in Quincy, Massachusetts. And that is a reflection of the incredible work that AJ and her team are doing. And we encourage everybody to refer back to the first episode of this series, because she just brings an incredible flair to design and the power of design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am so excited to follow along with that new project they're going on with. It's been so cool to hear, like, even as a visual designer, that's such a different type of design. And so it was really powerful to hear how she kind of thinks about it and their agency does. And then moving into episode 2, we really dove into the 101 concepts. And in a great in-depth conversation with Madison and Rachel, they brought to life like what does great design look like when we're talking about designing experiences. And I really appreciated all of the amazing examples they brought to life. I thought I just really understood those concepts so well. I'd love to know, like, if you had to pick one, what's one thing that kind of stood out, one concept that really stood out from that last episode of those 101 concepts for you?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll bring forward one concept that I think really rang loud and clear, and then I'd love to touch on a few almost misconceptions or misnomers that I think were really vetted in that conversation. One theme from our experiential design 101 that came through, and I know it sounds obvious, but it really matters, is that we're all designers. So as Rachel and Madison took us through all of these incredible examples of experiential design, they were able to tie it to something as obvious as designing a meeting or designing an experience that you might have one-on-one with one of your direct reports. They really brought a sense of design to our work, our day-to-day work as leaders, and we should all start to look through that design lens, which has a couple of really key concepts, and we're talking about a few of them today. But I'll move on to, I think, a few of the really interesting misconceptions that were handled in that series. And one of those is that design and design thinking happens in a vacuum. It clearly does not. We all have a part in it, and in fact, it is a very specific process. For those of us who are a little bit more operational in mindset or a little bit more type A, following a design process can be a way that we engage with design. That's not just an open room with whiteboards and sticky notes. The other, I think, great kind of misconception that was brought forward really has to do with the impact of design. I think most people take experiential design and they apply it to some of the most creative work that we might do or some of the most innovative products. But Madison and Rachel really brought us closer to the opportunity to apply design to day-to-day conversations, to important interactions that we're having with folks, and also to projects or products that we're building within our work. And so I think the key theme there is that we can find design in anything, and our job as leaders and as practitioners is to find unique opportunities to put our folks in the story, right? And whether that's an actual event or even a physical installation, great. Or whether that's just simply getting a little bit closer to our users' needs and designing around that. So I think Madison and Rachel did a wonderful job of making design a lot more approachable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right on that, spot on, of calling it, we're all designers, and it's approachable. I think a lot of times it can be really hard to see how you get into it. And I think that conversation was so helpful to see how you bring it into the day-to-day. And I'm excited to dive into more of those concepts today to make that a little bit more practice, have some tools to use. But before we dive in, I'm most excited to ask you this question. We've started every episode hearing about experiential design, because there is this amazing connection to kind of childhood memories. I think there's this like getting lost in an experience and kind of wonder that happens when you're a kid. And so I would love to know, Anthony, what was your first memory of experience design, of getting lost in an experience and seeing the intentionality behind it?
I'm so glad that this question oftentimes is flipped back on me, because it's one of my favorite questions to ask other people. And I get so excited when I get to speak to those very formative childhood experiences of mine. I think oftentimes we're trying to reverse or decondition our previous or childhood experiences. And it's so fun sometimes to just indulge in so many great experiences that we had as children that formed and made us who we are as professionals, and particularly as designers. For me, that was my mother's cookie exchanges. These were annual gatherings of my mom and all of her teacher friends. She taught for 30 plus years. And she made sure that she hosted this event every year. And if there are a couple of things that just so stick out about gathering and community in my, it was my mother's ability to create the space for these incredible experiences and truly put people into an experience. And that had everything to do with the environment that she would set up in the home for 30 or 40 people to gather. Her recognition of the way that people interact and communicate. There were almost different zones throughout the house that didn't necessarily need a sign. But just called for a little bit of a different energy. You had people, dancing to Motown music in the basement, and you had people having, one-on-one intimate discussions in the living room. And I didn't know at the time, but this was very intentional, and you do this through her just unique ability to understand what brings people together, what lights people up. I think her deep sense of empathy and connection to her friends made for such meaningful experiences. And it's no wonder why, the cookie exchange just so happened to land on her plate every year. But shout out to Mom for her incredible cookie exchanges. They definitely shaped who I am today as an experienced designer.
That's amazing. I
How
love
about
that
you?
story. So I was gonna say, I feel like the theme is always this: you don't feel it in the moment. You're just there, and now looking back,
Mhm.
you see that intentionality and the purpose that went into a lot of the decisions that had to be made. When I think about this, I definitely think back to my family reunions. So we would gather around the 4th of July, most summers at my aunt's house in Wisconsin. And it was, when you say an immersive experience, you were all in for that weekend. There's definitely a competitive side to my family. It started, I will say the whole weekend started weeks before. We would always have chatter. So emails going back and forth on what's happening, some of the games that were going to be happening. Everyone, we would have our tried and true 500 card tournament that went on the entire weekend, mostly till, sometimes 2 a.m. We would have Chex Mix competitions, farm chore relays. There was always something new and exciting. And it was such a fun time of coming together, finding those times of, enjoyment and games and also deep connection. And so it's been fun now to think back on all of the what you might call design decisions that had to be
Mm,
made, but we're just part of the experience, and creating it. So
I love that.
yeah, very fond.
Oh, it's so fun to reflect, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. So, let's dive into some of these tools and resources that we have to bring experience design, to bring that design mindset into our work, into our role,
Yeah.
into our day to day. And I think a great place to start is really around this concept of creative confidence. I think we've talked about this being kind of that groundstone of being able to get in that creative mindset and be able to make those creative decisions. I think about creative confidence really calling us to be vulnerable, being able to accept failure as part of the process, being able to show our work as we're doing it, to invite people into that process. And working together, really inviting collaboration in. And
Yeah.
so I'd love to know, like, what does creative confidence look like? What does it feel like for you?
hmm I think we've all had a certain sense of creative confidence, and whether we feel it in the moment or don't, it's there. And I think we all maybe could appreciate that we'd like a little bit more of that. There's so many times, maybe in work or in life, where we don't feel confident. But that's what I love about this concept of creative confidence, because it almost starts with a letting go of any expectations or any personal judgments that you might have about your abilities. There's this incredible exercise that we like to bring to our clients to break the ice, if you will, in a design sprint. And we have everybody sit down with a blank piece of paper and a pen, and we ask everybody to draw a vase. And everybody sits down and they immediately draw a vase, and you ask everybody to hold the paper up, and you see that everybody's vase looks very similar. And the point that we make right there is that everybody has the ability to put pen to paper.
Mm,
Everybody has the ability to create low fidelity prototypes based on our experiences and what we know. But the research suggests and history suggests that at some point, most of us as adults were told when we were little that we were either good at art or not good at art. And we attribute that to our our sense of creativity. That if we were told that maybe we weren't good at drawing as a child, we maybe think that we're not a creative person. Um, we next ask people to design a better way to enjoy flowers. And that gives people an opportunity to apply a little bit of their creative confidence. So not only can I put pen to paper, but I can start to solve for some bigger issues using a low fidelity format. And you ask everybody to hold their paper up, and whether you can draw or not, the ideas that come forward end up being eye-opening. People have all these incredible different ways for people to enjoy flowers, whether that's through a window or a different staging or bedding for the flowers that never existed before. And that is yet another example of creative confidence, that you don't need artistic abilities to be able to solve for big problems. You need the ability to put pen to paper, to let go of any judgments that you might have of your own work or others. And that starts with creating the space for this type of design work. And that draw the vase exercise, I think, is a wonderful way to get people in the mood.
Yeah, I love that example. And I think there's also probably a power to doing that as a collective too. I think that takes off some of the pressure of the individual needing to do it right. I know I
Yeah,
felt that early in my design career of I wanted to hide my work until it was perfect and done. I would be in the computer lab after like 10 p.m. most nights when the professor wasn't looking over my shoulder. And what I've learned through the years is it's so much better when people are seeing that work as it's happening and
sure.
being able to show that work early, show just an idea drawn out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's going to help kind of shape what it becomes. And it takes that pressure off a little bit to have that perfect answer and perfect solution right away, and actually invite the feedback and have the confidence to kind of grow it from there.
Absolutely. We all can do so much more to create confidence for our people and our teams. And sometimes that means just truly allowing folks, again, to kind of put pen to paper and identifying that this is not necessarily a space where we've got to get it right, but this is a space for us to build together and iterate.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. So another kind of concept we've talked about is this convergent and divergent thinking, which again I think can be so helpful in getting into that design mindset, and really identifying, with divergent thinking, we're getting as many ideas on the table as possible, and then with convergent, we're narrowing in on a solution there, but we're not doing those at the same time. We're being in the space and then in another space, which really allows kind of a new kind of brainstorming space. So what are you seeing with divergent and convergent thinking? How can people kind of put this into practice in their day-to-day and
Sure.
their role?
Yeah, well, you'll see in the toolkit, we've put together a framework that allows you to do some of this divergent and convergent thinking. What we see in so many cases is folks that are naturally trying to do both at the same time. So we always say, you can create choice or you can make choice. You can't do both at the same time. But that is one of the number one offenders in the design process, and I fall into it as well too, is converging too soon or potentially trying to converge while you're putting all of your ideas on the board. There's a reason why you shouldn't be doing both at the same time. And that is so that you can really maximize all of the possibilities before you start to even group ideas together or, again, make selections. And so we're all used to these kind of brainstorming sessions. But how many times have we been in a brainstorming session where we're putting ideas on the board, but we're immediately talking feasibility or key considerations or guardrails, or maybe even mentally we're shooting down ideas because it's just not possible within our organization or within our construct. The design process and experiential design really challenges you to stay in that space of possibility and to do that in a very defined space before you then move into the space of grouping ideas together and making ultimate selection. And that is a really hard thing to do in real time. And so in the design toolkit, you'll see a framework that allows you to do some brainstorming in both of those spaces, but hold both of those spaces very definitively separate from each other. And so, what does this practically look like? Not all of us are brainstorming all day, every day. That's not our primary responsibility. But so many of us are hosting and leading meetings, key decision-making meetings or possibly project update meetings. That is our time to potentially predefine, are we in a space of divergence where we want to consider more options, new iterations, big ideas, or are we in a space of convergence? Is this the opportunity for us to make some selection? And I think as leaders, we can all relate to maybe getting those two mixed up or not clearly defining it at the front end of a meeting. And you've got folks that still want to talk bigger picture or put new ideas on the board, and really you've got 30 minutes to make a decision. And so we can practice convergent and divergent thinking by, number one, naming it, helping people understand the difference between the two, and number two, predefining the space that we're in and what the true outcome is from this type of thinking.
Yeah, I love that. It feels so practical, but it's such an easy step to miss of actually naming what space you're in. And I think that can really help people then stay in that space. It kind of gives that group accountability, because it does feel so simple, and yet it's so easy to just want to jump to the convergent when you're in divergent.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just kind of dive into our last quick tool here. We have talked a lot in this series around our users and how to design for our users. What does it look like to get to know your user? And I think the power of that in really creating more relevant designs and experiences for them. And so, from your perspective, what have you seen about why is our connection to our customers more important now than it's really ever been?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That I'm super excited about is a lot of the anecdotal and even objective research that is starting to bubble up from the last couple years that suggests that the need to really understand our users, and I'll define users here in a moment, the need to understand our users is higher today than it ever has been. And I think some of this might be obvious, some of it not so obvious, but clearly over the last 24 to 36 months, we have all been met with such change, such personal and professional transformation. And each of our individual and very unique situations is showing up in our work, in our personal development, and in our relationships. And as leaders, we all can relate to the fact that we have this new responsibility to truly understand our users. And maybe the less obvious thing is we don't have a ton of time to do it. So, when we talk about users, this could be anybody from somebody that you're designing for. In this case, it could be our clients. It could be the communities around you. It could be your direct reports. Your user could be a personal relationship that you have, your partner. In the past, and particularly in the professional world, we would take so much time to get to know our users. In fact, organizations have built entire marketing functions around consumer insights and research. And although that level of rigor is still very productive and informative for brands and for organizations, it's almost this real-time situational awareness of our users that is showing up as this new power skill for today's leaders. Because in so many cases, we don't have a choice. We're almost met with a unique situation, or the almost dismantling of the lines between someone's personal life and professional life, because they just don't have a choice, and they need your support in that. And so this idea of stepping into our audiences, stepping into the shoes of our colleagues, of our direct reports, and of our customers, it's just so much more relevant today. And objectively, it shows that today, for every 1% improvement that we can make in our connection with our customer, there's a 2% direct correlation and improvement in ROI. And that correlation is higher today objectively than it's been in potentially history. And so I'm fascinated with turning some of these insights into action and finding day-to-day ways for us to get closer to our customers, if you will. You can do this, in more organized ways. And as part of the toolkit, we have an empathy map that allows you to really understand how people come into either your product or your initiative. What are they seeing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? You can also do this informally by, slowing down and thinking intentionally prior to stepping into a conversation or a meeting, what the other person might be, how the other person might be showing up, or what they might be thinking coming into your conversation. And I would say more than those two approaches would be, again, and I just continue to go back to this concept of creating the space. One of the most effective ways that we can get to know our users, that we can deepen our relationships, is truly creating the space and asking the question, how are you doing? Because it's that space that will give us more real-time insights that doesn't show up on, a consumer research paper or some sort of benchmarking initiative that you or your team have been through. And so I would just encourage folks to really think about this sense of empathy as more situational and less a function within the design process.
Yeah, I love that call out of it being this more ongoing thing, and being connected, like you said, to your user. The more you're asking that throughout, the less you feel like right before a project you have to figure it all out because you're in tune with who you're working with and who you're talking to. Yeah, that is so powerful. So, you've referenced this toolkit a couple of times. As Anthony has mentioned, we put a toolkit together that walks through these resources, a couple others, and really has tangible exercises, tools, interactive that you can use. You can find it on our perspectives page at thoughttium.com/perspectives and download it and use it from there.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, Molly, I want to thank you for stepping into today's conversation. It was so great to be, on this side of the microphone. I'm just so proud of you and the work that you're doing, not just for Thoughtium, but for, the communities that surround us and we know that surround you. And just know that, this work that you're doing to bring design to the forefront has just been so enriching and I think so eye-opening for so many of us. This perspective series, I think, has been very meaningful for us at Thoughtium, and hopefully it has for you all, because we're finding more reasons to put design first. And, I think if there's anything that we've learned through the last 3 weeks is that there are unique ways to lead with design, regardless of your role, your position, or even what you're working on. And we hope that you all found a sense of that as you've gone through this 3-part series. And we do encourage everybody to dive into the Perspectives Toolkit. It's got a downloadable PDF that allows you to kind of walk through some of these methodologies that will allow you to really experience the power of design. And this Perspective series then rounds out. We want to thank all of our guests that have been a part of this series. Shout out to AJ and Madison, who've been a big part of the conversation. Shout out to Molly for really leading the effort. This also brings us closer to our 100th episode of Navigating Now. So we really look forward to that episode in a couple of weeks. But prior to that, next week, we're going to be diving into a discussion with one of our dear friends, community members, and preferred partners. Michelle Thomas is going to be joining us to talk about new ways to lead in kind of this new world that we're living in. And we're just thrilled to have Michelle at the table next week. So with that being said, you can check out all of our content at thoughttium.com/live. You can see all of our perspectives at /perspectives. Molly, thank you so much for joining. And we really look forward to episode 99, a week from today, 3 p.m. Central. So long, everybody. Have a great rest of the week.